really did is it eliminated many of the incentives for in the research for the energy of the future, the emerging technologies. You know, aiming, many people have criticized and said it was aiming at trying to kill, you know, renewables or some of the other emerging technologies, and supported fossil fuel. But really what it did and what it could do potentially is hit Kansas. When you think about the fact that, you know, in Kansas, we are less than 3% of the nation's population, yet we produce 20% of all the, you know, wheat that the country consumes. We could be the exact same when it comes to renewable energy. We sit right in the heart of the nation's richest reserves for renewable energy. And as these technologies emerge, markets are going to keep going in that direction. The only real question is whether or not we will be the ones who, you know, are able to benefit from that. We'll be able to make those, you know, produce those technologies. So my question really for the two legislators, and this is a good question I think for both of you all, because you're both my legislators. For you all, and even if you're not on energy and natural resources or utilities or anything, you can find out later about this information. But I'm curious, what will you do? Because some of the changes that were made in that bill, like taking away some of the incentives for, you know, renewable development or tax credits, and we can say we don't want corporate welfare, but these incentives pale in comparison to the ones that are out there right now for the fossil fuel industry, which has been around for 120 years, but we still continue with those incentives. What will you do at the state level to try to make sure you promote and keep this Kansas cash crop, you know, a viable tool for us to continue to develop our economy?
So I've always supported all forms of energy development. I think we all learned from Winter Storm Uri that how fragile that supply system can be if we don't have on-demand energy. And I think that event really changed how our utility companies operate. So we're building the 2 or 3 new gas plants out west. And the thing you have to understand about the way the state law is set up, because renewables are not constant, whether it's the sun or the wind, they're on, they're off, we have to have, for every kilowatt of renewable we put online, you have to have a kilowatt of on-demand energy as well. So we have to build up these systems together. And I think it's check all the boxes. As the small nuclear comes on, we need to be investing in that as much as we can at the state level. I think we need to support development of solar, wind, whatever folks want. Now, at the state level, it gets difficult because we don't necessarily control a lot of the development of these renewables. If you'll just Google search the headlines, there's tremendous pushback for some of these renewable projects from landowners in various parts of the state. And so it can be difficult to develop these projects, to build out the transmission lines to support them. You know, we have all this wind in western Kansas, but if you try to build a new transmission line, you know.
So I'm glad you brought that out. I work for a transmission utility.
Yeah, and I understand, and my wife's been involved in the energy business, so I have some perspective, but it's good. You know, I've always said if the landowners that are willing to do this, I'm fine with it. It's their land. We need the energy, and let's get as much online, and if it's clean, that is great. But you know, there's a mix here. It's kind of almost like the property tax problem, where you're intertwined between locals and the state, and there's only so much we can do without getting really heavy-handed. But along those lines, I'm supportive of measures that increase energy across the board.
Are those people paid for use of their land?
Yes.
Yeah, typically they have a contract. They lease out.
Like we did with oil wells.
Exactly.
You know, as we currently stand right now, what I would do is continue to bring up questions and add amendments to bills, typically on the House floor, to try to enhance. I am concerned your energy bills are going to increase. They are. We can't, this is not sustainable, and we need to address it. I would probably advocate more on the higher ed budget upon looking at how we can utilize these opportunities to grow academic programs, degree programs. Washburn Tech is in my school, is in my district, and see what we can do to provide incentives to make sure that we don't lose the 10,000 jobs that we're going to lose. It is the best thing that we can do right now is to be vocal on the Democratic side, is to be vocal and to add and try to not be afraid of making a bill better if it's possible, because the politics of having one side win over the other and not to bring it up because we don't have the votes is not good for Kansas. And that's just, so that's how I would approach it.
Just one more follow-up that, of specific examples. So we had our data center bill this year, and I worked against it in committee. I tried to get it amended and got outvoted. I spoke against it on the floor, and I voted against it twice, because the way they set that bill up is a power company or a data center, where they come in, they're not allowed to create their energy for the first 10 years of the year, because the bill got reworked because they want us to be able to collect the tax revenue off of them buying energy rather than producing it themselves. If we get a chance to relook at that, that does not mesh with national policy. We need to allow things like data centers to create their own power source, because I have concerns about that availability, and with AI growth and cloud and all of that stuff, it grows exponentially, and I'm worried that we will put in data centers and we won't have energy available for economic growth that creates jobs like manufacturing and things like that. And so I think we need to be having more serious discussions that are more future focused, because I think a lot of people just haven't realized the potential impact.
Just on a broad look at this, you mentioned, Kansas, we're an agriculture and ranch state, and I'm very proud of that. We need to be very careful with our land as we look at wind and solar, that we are still producing food. We still have the land needed to produce the food that we need. A lot of bad things can happen with solar. I burn pasture. If it gets out of hand, which it has before, and it hits solar panels, we're putting bad things into the environment, and then it's impossible to have cattle or whatever, and crops where there's solar. And yeah, there's also some complications with wind as well. So I think we need to be very careful about protecting our food growing land.
The same argument can be made anytime you drive by an oil derrick.
Yeah. They don't take as much space.
I understand. Again,
it's not on private property.
We're doing really well with decorum. I just want to circle back on this one thing, asking what we can do. As if you look at the 2018 expansion of the Farm Bill, that's going to be great for Kansas in the short term. But nothing was talked about, and we knew tariffs were being put in place. Nothing was talked about on how we can regulate the tariffs and how they're going to hit the farmers of Kansas. And as long as China and the other world countries have tariffs, reciprocal tariffs on us, our farmers are going to be hit hard. And anybody that tells you that the country's going to pay for the tariffs are not paying attention to how business models actually do that.
Hi, my name's Lauren Reinhold, and I am a displaced federal employee, so I'd say I and several 100,000 other people are proof positive that decisions made at the federal level affect Kansans quickly. Not 2 years from now, 4 years from now. They can affect us very quickly. Some of these issues will. That's my soapbox. Here's my question, two-part question. There was a lot of talk about Medicaid today. Do you think all Kansans should have affordable, capitalize that, health care? If so, how do you propose making that happen?
I will say yes, and I will say that we need to revisit revenue opportunities to make sure that we can afford the expenditures that will be related to this increase of access to health care. That will also mean keeping our insurance commissioner, keeping that person accountable to make sure that they are negotiating and holding insurance companies responsible. The prior authorization issue that we have in this state is almost criminal. And the fact that we have not done anything to address or regulate that demonstrates just how hard it is to get proper health care to all Kansans. And I'm happy to talk more about the PAs if you want to afterwards.
I agree, prior authorization is an issue, and it's frustrating to me that we haven't been able to push more through at the state level. I think the feds have created an awful mess between the insurance companies and the suppliers, and there doesn't seem to be any discussion about how to actually make our healthcare system better. I don't think creating a fully government-run healthcare system is going to be good for anybody in the long run, but it doesn't seem like the people in DC are really doing much to make the system any better, and we've had some local stuff like prior authorization that's not getting progress, and those are the things we have to keep fighting for. The 340B program that we can't get through. There have been proposals that will help a little bit at the state level. We have to keep fighting for those, and then put pressure upward to try and get some serious reform to our system for sure.
Would anyone else like to take that?
I would love to hear from the Republican panelists. I mean, I heard from you, sir, but our party, the GOP party folks, yes. I would love to hear from you.
Well, if I could just wave a magic wand and have what I wanted, which I feel like is what we're asking, I would love for us to have a system in which it is truly freedom. I mean, you're asking how I would tweak, I guess, an already disastrous system. What I choose to do and what I prefer personally is catastrophic insurance for myself for cancer, devastating things, and then paying out of pocket for regular doctor's visits. I think that would bring down the cost, and I think it would expand the folks who practice medicine, which is, I mean, affordable healthcare. It can't be affordable if we don't have enough doctors, and we don't have enough nurses, and we don't have enough providers. And it's hard to have those providers if they have to go through this ginormous system of paperwork, an entire industry of people who do medical coding, and that's not healthcare. That has nothing to do with healthcare. So if I could wave a magic wand and get what I wanted, we would have some sort of insurance that allowed us to get catastrophic insurance, and then we would pay out of pocket at probably a much reduced rate for regular doctor's visits. I actually know that's what would happen. If you go to your doctor today, which I do regularly, and they say, give me your insurance card, I say, no, you tell me how much it costs if I don't use my insurance card. And I'll tell you what, half the time they give it to me for less cost. Like less than I will pay at the end, because they don't have to run it through insurance. Try it sometime. I'm dead serious. Don't try it for something like a test or something, but just go in and visit your doctor for a prescription for an antibiotic, and you might find that what they will charge you personally out of pocket, which you can still write off on your taxes, is less than what they will charge your insurance company, but your insurance company will just then charge you. It's true.
Me? Okay. Hi, I'm Scott Henson. I have been an educator with Topeka Public Schools for 46 years. And I originally was going to say that you can tell maybe from my questions and remarks that I am also overwhelmingly partisan. However, I think it is time to move past that. When I hear the President of the United States saying, I hate almost 50% of the citizens of our nation, I am troubled. I digress. I was at a meeting at Derek Schmidt's office last week, and one of my colleagues from 501 pointed out that the federal government, Congress has already appropriated education funding. However, and I believe that the amount was $45 billion just for Kansas, is being withheld. It's already been appropriated, and it's being withheld. I work for the Head Start program right now. That concerns me greatly. Back to being partisan or nonpartisan. We've got to work together on this. When I taught first grade, I had 3 rules, the 3 C's I called it. Cooperate, let's all cooperate this year. Let's all communicate with one another, and let's all care for one another. It is time we all cared for one another, and I don't see it happening in our nation today. Back to the education funding, and I'm glad that you brought up about special education funding, Kirk. how can, if this is true and those billions of dollars that have already been appropriated for education, for all those special programs, after-school programs, Head Start, all kinds of things, how can the state, working together, caring for our children, caring for our families, which I've dedicated my life to, how can we work together to alleviate those kinds of withholding those federal education funds? We need to do something at the state level. What can we do? Or working together again.
Well, I mean, so the most important thing, right, will be to provide input when we have our budget process. And, you know, having spoken with some of the after-school providers in the district, it's a pretty stark story to see what's happening with some of the cuts to Boys and Girls Clubs, things like that, the other after-school programs. So, you know, that has a workforce impact as well as, it's not just, you know, that's a ripple into the family. So I think all of us have to make known the programs that are important, have to make it clear to all legislators. Don't send an email to all 165 of us at once. That's a good way to not get read. But, you know, the stories have to be told. There's going to be the special budget meetings that will start up in the fall. And it's having a presence, it's sharing the stories, and making sure you connect with the people so they understand the real impacts. And that's where you get, okay, we've got a gap, we need $45 million, can we get a state, can we get some local, can we put it together, and can we cover it through the course of however long this is going on? That's the work it takes. You got to connect with us, with real people and real stories, and that has the most powerful impact.
Thank you. And I would add on this is like, it does depend on who the leaders are in the State House. And so perhaps this next year, we'll see, it's going into election year, we may see some grace, we may not see some in that area. I also am, to demonstrate bipartisanship, I appreciate good leadership and good chair leadership. And I will tell them, I think that we have, on the House side, we have a strong chair on the tax committee, Adam Smith, and we have a strong chair on the appropriations committee. And I know this because they will take time to answer my questions, and I believe them. I've had discussions with Speaker Dan Haskins about the new budget process. It was a mess. Anybody who tells you otherwise, it was a mess this last year. We reinvented it. I believe him that he sees that it's a mess, and he's going to try to continue to work on that to get it better. That's an example of trying to be efficient. He's the leader. That's where we'll go. The one thing that frustrates me, though, and I circle back, is it is statistically impossible for you to always vote party line if you are truly representing your district and you won the seat by 25 to 40 votes. And that should not, there should be accountability on that. And the 3-day grace period, we had the veto sustained. We had, I was surprised, as ranking member, I was like, holy smokes, we did it. But then the phone calls started and we lost votes one by one, just out of fear, and we're going to run somebody against you in the primary. So it really depends on the leadership and what we want to make. But you keep us accountable. You show up.
All right, well, there were a lot of hands that we weren't able to get to, and I apologize to everyone who didn't get a chance to ask a question. But I'm afraid we're out of time. So I just want to thank all of you for coming out, because these town halls like these are how we exercise our democracy. It's how we defend our democratic rights and expand them in the future. And I also want to thank all of our panelists.
Thank you for